What's up, guys? Welcome back to Exposing Sierra Leone, your weekly live stream where we review all things pertaining to Sierra Leone and everything we can do to bring our country forward. I am your host, Joe Hatagwa, co-host normally, but today just your host. It's just me. And we are going to be covering all things pertaining to Sierra Leone. So if you're interested in Sierra Leone, you're from Sierra Leone, you've been to Sierra Leone, you're planning to come back to Sierra Leone, this is the live stream for you. We're going to talk about everything that you need to know about what's happening in the country right now. Sierra Leone is rich, ladies and gentlemen. It's rich, real rich, according to some of the news reports, and we are going to talk about it today. So again, it's just me. My co-host is usually Admire Demo. She runs the Sierra Leone's Killing It Instagram page and YouTube channel. So for those of you who are watching from that channel, welcome. My name is Joe Hatagwa. I'm the founder of Authentic African. We do a number of different things. We help people move, invest, and visit the continent of Africa. We focus on African entrepreneurs and sharing their stories with the world. And we also want to bridge the gap between Africans living on the continent and Africans who are living outside of the continent. We got so many things launching this year. First thing I think I mentioned to you last week is that we have our own direct booking website, which we're going to be putting out shortly. And we are working with Airbnb hosts who want to promote their platform so that everybody who's looking to book a luxurious stay or an affordable stay, you can do it through my direct booking website, which is coming soon. Merch is also coming soon, stolen from Africa. If you're not familiar, get familiar. The merch is coming soon. All right, so let's get into today's stories because there's a lot to cover in a little bit of time. So the first story is a big one. It's one of those that is really hard to believe, but here is what they say. Sierra Leone holds 30 billion barrels of recoverable oil worth 2.31 trillion US dollars. So it has been reported widely that this is an estimated number of 30 billion barrels. This is based on current oil prices. However, these figures represent potential reserves derived from seismic studies and past estimates. So it's not confirmed commercial discoveries from recent exploration. Why is that important? Everybody's been promoting this, that Sierra Leone has $2.3 trillion in oil underneath its ground. That would be a groundbreaking discovery, and that would mean a very few people will get very, very rich in Sierra Leone. It is not going to be something for the country to benefit from necessarily. There'll be a few individuals that'll likely benefit from it. There may potentially be a price reduction in oil if this is true. So let's go through some things. The $30 billion in oil estimate, the 30 billion barrel estimate is based on a cumulative geological survey and earlier explorations, including the Vega prospect discovered by a company that does Petroleum, which itself thought to contain about 3 billion barrels. As of July 2025, there have been no newly confirmed or developed oil fields in Sierra Leone. The latest exploration was a 6-week 3D seismic survey, which began in May of this year. It's still being analyzed, and no new commercial resources have been verified. Government and news sources alike, including statements from Sierra Leone's Petroleum Directorate, present this figure as the nation's resource potential, a reason for optimism and investment, but not as a current provable, producible reserves. Past exploration discovered hydrocarbons, but failed to reach commercial viability due to factors such as insufficient volumes, high costs, low oil prices, and external disruptions like the Ebola outbreak previously. So the $2.3 trillion valuation is a number that's based on the upper end volume estimate and on current oil prices. Actual revenue will actually depend on a proven recovery. It'll also depend on development costs, oil prices over time, and successful commercialization. That's a process that remains uncertain and likely many years away. So in summary, while Sierra Leone is actively marketing its offshore oil potential and attracting interest from international energy companies, the $30 billion barrel and $2.3 trillion figure that has been described in the news is unproven. The potential rather than new verified oil wealth. So its potential is rather than new verified oil wealth. So the actual scale of commercially recoverable oil will only be clear after current seismic data is fully analyzed and they start actually drilling. So who will likely be drilling? Likely American and European oil companies, maybe oil companies from the Far East as well. A couple people have some thoughts. Tim Black says, I see leadership buying mansions in Europe and America when the oil money comes in. I think that's the sentiment of a lot of people based on this story. But Dina Babe says, do you know the reason for travel back to Sierra Leone? Yeah, to get to your homeland, to see your people, for vacation. Donovan McMillan says, mining oil is expensive, but the licensing might be needed for critical infrastructure to Sierra Leone. I mean, it gives a lot of people jobs. You know, oil and gas is big on the continent, especially in Nigeria. So if they can make it work, I think that could put some people to work. But in general, obviously, it's going to be a very small few that are going to benefit from this, if it in fact is $2.31 trillion in oil and 30 billion barrels in recoverable oil. Africa, the homeland, the land of flowing with milk and honey. Shout out to Shantae, who said that. For sure, it's the land of milk and honey, for sure. Okay, so Badina was asking about the travel ban. The travel ban is a visa ban for Sierra Leoneans looking to get a visa to the United States. It does not impact Americans going to Sierra Leone. However, make sure you get your American passport stamped when you go to Sierra Leone. I'm just going to tell you based on information I've gotten from people who work at the embassy and people who I've talked to at the airport. They say make sure you get your American passport stamped. And if you don't have a Sierra Leone passport, that doesn't even apply to you. But if you do, make sure you get your American passport stamped. So what do you guys think of this story? Do you think this is real? Do you think it's going to actually happen? Do you think the money will go back to the people? What do you guys think? Those of you who are watching, do you think that the Sierra Leone holds this much oil? And do you think that the people of Sierra Leone will benefit from it? I'm interested to hear from you guys. I know there's always a delay, so I'm going to move on to the next story, but I'll come back and see your responses in a second. So don't have a ton of time today, guys. So we're going to get through the stories quickly. But I just wanted to make sure you guys are aware of what's happening in Sierra Leone. I mean, it's been a few weeks since we've been online, you know, and Maya and I haven't been able to line up the timing perfectly. And, you know, she's unavailable today. But rest assured, we will be back on a more regular schedule moving forward. So stay tuned. All right. So some of the other updates. Here's a big one. And I think it's interesting because I didn't see this one coming, especially with the travel ban. The U.S. approves $480 million compact for Sierra Leone's energy sector. Now, my question to you guys is, do you think the energy sector will be improved with this $480 million agreement? So let's talk through the details of it. So first of all, let me give you guys kind of the early details previously. And it's kind of now just gone through. So Sierra Leone and the United States Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC, had signed this $480 million compact agreement in September 2024. Now, that was under the previous administration of the United States. Later, we heard things like this were canceled by the U.S. government once the new administration took over. Now, this agreement was focused on transforming Sierra Leone's energy sector by expanding access to affordable and reliable electricity for approximately 4.6 million people. So here are the key features of the deal. So the total value, of course, was $480 million from MCC. That was also then in addition to that, there was going to be 14.2 million contribution from the Sierra Leonean government. I think that's where a lot of people had some, let's say, apprehension about whether or not they thought that was going to happen. Now, this was meant for a 5-year grant. That was the duration of this agreement. The projects that are associated with it. The first one was the Transmission Backbone Project. That was meant to expand the national electricity transmission network, which increases coverage and reliability and enables cross-border energy trading within West Africa, meaning other countries that have better energy supply, like Ghana. I've heard there are other countries in West Africa who are doing better with energy supply. And so that would mean that you'd be able to tap into their grids and bring into that electricity into Sierra Leone, also expanding the current network as it is today. The next piece of it was the Distribution and Access Project. So that was supposed to improve the grid's reliability and reduce its losses. You guys might remember about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, when I was living in Sierra Leone, I went through and looked at some of the challenges that Sierra Leone is having. And more than 40% of the electricity that is distributed from the grid just gets lost. It doesn't even make it out to all the transformers, let alone the transformers that collect that energy and distribute it to each of the households that are in your local area. Those transformers also kept powering down and getting overpowered and not working. So we're talking about what could be and what likely is a complete overhaul, or would be a complete overhaul to the power grid itself. Now, this was supposed to target schools, health centers, businesses, and households in selected communities. And that's the Distribution and Access Project. Then there was a third project, and that was the Power Sector Reform Project. That was focusing on lowering the cost of electricity service, boosting private investment, and enhancing regulatory frameworks to ensure sector stability. Now, the purpose and intended impact. The impact aims to address Sierra Leone's chronic energy poverty, as 70% of the population in Sierra Leone currently lacks access to electricity, access at all. Then those who have access to inadequate electricity. And now it's designed to improve the country's energy infrastructure, enhance long-term economic growth, and increase energy sector sustainability. Now, there are conditions and controversies associated with this. As with any kind of deal you do with a foreign country, here's what they are. So the release of the funds is subject to Sierra Leone implementing specific, quote-unquote, democratic reforms, especially those related to the outcomes of the 2023 national elections and recommendations of electoral and constitutional reforms. You guys can look that up if you want to. They also say that there has to be implementation on the Agreement for National Unity and tripartite committees recommendations are required. So there's ongoing oversight from the MCC, its board, and the U.S. congressional stakeholders. So the U.S. Congress will be involved in overseeing this. And then lastly, there's been a public debate in Sierra Leone regarding the disbursement status, with confirmation that funds would only be released after meeting the stipulated reforms. Thus, actual fund transfers depend on continued government action on agreed-upon reforms. Now, some background. This compact builds on the previous MCC collaboration, including 44 million threshold programs since 2014 that address water and electricity sector reforms. So now I want to get back to your questions and comments and thoughts on this now that I've gone through the story. So the real source says, regarding energy, the question we have to ask about the details in that deal. The previous deal the government made with the Turkish company to supply electricity was horrible for Sierra Leone. And last time I checked, a year ago, it was over 44 million still owed, unfortunately, to that group. The real source says other West African countries have made agreements with that same Turkish company that have been more favorable for Africans. Well, it sounds like we need to do a better job negotiating if that is the case. Any other thoughts and comments on that MCC money? Ms. Let's see if there's anything here. That Afro Traveler says, this is huge for the continent. The oil discoveries on the continent will draw Lots of investment. That was the oil discussion from earlier before we got into this MCC agreement. Ms. Coffee says, I'm concerned that with the corruption from government and strong hand influence of the colonizers, that is their concern. Ms. Coffee says, probably heavy restrictions to use their selected contractors. U.S. will have to have a heavy hand on how the program runs. Donovan McClin says, Sierra Leone's smaller, more nimble government means the money will likely get in the builders' hands faster than the countries like America with the MCC grant. Well, you like to hope so. Donovan McQuillan says, in Congress, administrative involvement will just slow things down. All interesting points that you guys are making. Tim Black says, African countries are notorious for making one-sided deals, meaning one-sided to the other side. Well, generally, when you're making a deal, right, the person who is giving the money or the person that is bigger tends to make the deal favorable in their terms. Let me give you guys an example of this. Now, countries are not businesses, but just to kind of give you a correlation. So I have worked with companies large and small. They seem large, but aren't large compared to other companies. So for example, I used to work at Hulu. You guys are familiar with Hulu. Hulu would do deals with Google, right? Sometimes we would do deals with Google. Google would not accept any red lines we would make to the contract. So Google sends you over a contract and says, you will do this based on our stipulated terms, or we do not do business. And of course, we as Hulu, we used to take that stance a lot and be like, well, if you want to work with us, you have to take our terms with smaller companies. Well, when it came to Google, we had to do what Google said. And that's exactly the same way the United States operates or other countries operate when they're dealing with countries on the continent of Africa. They see them as small, and therefore they have bad deals. This is why I'm talking about the idea of a United States of Africa, where African countries work together to have collective bargaining so they can have better deals for the continent. Until you do that, of course, Sierra Leone and others will have these one-sided deals with all kinds of stipulations. Tim Black says, please hit that like button, everybody, and check out the online store. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that very much so. And for those of you who want to support in any other way, if you have the ability to, it's going to be on the bottom of the screen there. All right, so let's move on to the next story. Feel free to continue to write comments on the previous stories. We'll get to them as soon as we can. Again, we are on the clock, so I got to get through these stories quickly, but I hope you guys are finding this useful. Give me a thumbs up if you guys are finding this useful and helpful. If you knew any of these stories, give me a thumbs up as well. I'm getting a call from Sierra Leone, and I cannot answer it because there was a mass today that that was had, and I was supposed to get an update on it. Okay, so this is the next one. I think this is an interesting story. Do I have? I do not have this particular image for this particular story, but we'll just go through it anyway. So the next story is Sierra Leone and the Chinese firm sign $300 million deal to develop an iron ore deposit in Sierra Leone. So it's a significant and new agreement with the Chinese company, China Overseas Engineering Group Company Limited, acronym COVEC, to develop the Tonkolili North iron ore deposit and supporting infrastructure. The latest deal signed in July 2025 brings in up to $300 million in financing from COVEC. The funds are earmarked for the construction of the mine, transport networks, and beneficiation facilities in the region. The financing will be structured through EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction contract, a deferred payment agreement, which means it's a 40-year term agreement or longer, where Sierra Leone will be paying this over time, almost always 20 to 40 years, and a joint venture agreement ensuring the project does not rely on Sierra Leone's national budget. The agreement built, which also means a lot of times, like, for example, something similar to this was a Chinese company built the major highway that goes from Freetown all the way to Bo, and well, not all the way to Bo, but to other areas of Sierra Leone. And they built 3 toll roads or 3 tolls on the way. Each of those they collect, from what I understand, for the next 20-something years. They collect all money on the tolls, the company who built the tolls, right? From what I understand. And that's in order to ensure that it's not based on financing from the Sierra Leone government and the budget and what could happen with that, but it actually comes from revenue generated on the ground to ensure that they are paid back for the development of those roads. So something similar in the world of iron ore will have to be done in order for this company to feel like they'll be made whole. So this agreement builds on a framework agreement signed in September 2024. It is being implemented under the legal framework of Sierra Leone Mines and Minerals Development and Management Corporation Act of 2023. Sierra Leone's Mineral Wealth Fund, a fully state-owned company, is leading the project, aiming to generate revenue and fund infrastructure developments without placing additional pressure on the country's regular budget. The Embassy of Sierra Leone in China has welcomed this development, highlighting it part of an ongoing cooperation between Sierra Leone and China. With this agreement signed, the iron ore project is expected to proceed rapidly in the coming months. This move is seen by Sierra Leone officials as an important step toward transforming the country's mineral wealth into broader national development, reflecting a strategy to maximize revenue from natural resources and stimulate infrastructure growth without increasing government debt. So fingers crossed that that will happen. Thoughts on this, folks who are watching? Awele, hello, just joined from the UK. Shout out to you, Awele. Thank you for joining. Donovan McQuillan says the United States of Africa needs an urban planning committee. Yes. Tijan Sar says, I'm watching from Sweden. Good evening to all. Shout out to Tijan. What's up, Tijan? Okay, so that's from the Authentic African Instagram page. All right, so that's that story there. We will follow it along and keep you guys posted. Next, speaking of the Turkish company that was brought up earlier, KARPOWERSHIP, Sierra Leone signs a new deal with KARPOWERSHIP through the Ministry of Finance and Energy and Electricity Distribution and Supply Authority, or EDSA, signed a 1-year extension to its power supply contract with KARPOWERSHIP. The agreement ensures the provision of 45 megawatts of electricity during the dry season and 25 megawatts during the rainy season, which is right now. The rainy season is happening right now in Sierra Leone. This extension, follows the expiration of the original 5-year contract. Now, there's been many discussions, much talk about power going out in Sierra Leone and the KARPOWERSHIP shutting off power because of debt owed to the KARPOWERSHIP. Now, I mentioned earlier, $480 million is coming to Sierra Leone for energy. I don't know how much money is still owed to the KARPOWERSHIP, but I would hope that some of that money will go to paying these guys back because they've been supplying electricity in a significant way in Sierra Leone for a while. And if they're still owed money, I hope that this money will go towards paying them back. Now, going back to the previous story, the real source says, let's be careful how we negotiate with the Chinese. Shine your eyes. Shine your eyes. Well, that's what the real source says. I will leave that with the real source and keep my opinions to myself on doing business with the Chinese, because I myself have to encounter them when I go to Sierra Leone. All right. Donovan McQuillan says, Sierra Leone should bargain for sewage and power. They should. All right. Now let's move on to the next story. And I'll be looking for your answers and your responses to this too. I'd like to hear from you guys on this. So the next story is a powerful one. And this is one that we wanted to talk about with Admire one day, and we'll talk about this in detail. And a good friend of mine's mother, she also, we will plan to have her on to talk about her experience. And this is a controversial topic in Sierra Leone. It's called Bondo. in Sierra Leone, but most people consider it female genital mutilation, or FGM, and it has been banned for girls under the age of 18. A new law just went into effect banning it. So let's talk about it a little bit. The government of Sierra Leone has taken a major step towards strengthening child protection with the enactment of the Child Rights Act of 2025, passed by Parliament on Thursday, July 3rd of this month, 2025. The new law introduces stronger safeguards against child abuse, exploitation, and harmful traditional practices. Following the passage of the law, the Minister of Gender and Children's Affairs, Iseta Mahoy, addressed the press to clarify the scope and the intent of the legislation. The Child Rights Act of 2025 is a result of over 7 months of intense parliamentary deliberation and stakeholder consultations. Though the final version avoided explicit references to terms like female genital mutilation, the law maintains strong provisions against acts that endanger the well-being of children, which can still mean that it can still happen. This minister said she warned that anyone found initiating a girl under the age of 18 into any form of rite of passage, including the Bondo society, will now face legal action. The penalties include a fine not less than 100,000 new leones, or 100,000 new leones, it's 100,000 divided by 24. Right, so it's about $5,000 or so, or $4,000. Sorry, it's about $4,000 is what they'll have to pay, or potentially imprisonment. To ensure widespread understanding and compliance with the law, the Ministry of Gender and Children's Affairs will soon launch a national public education campaign. This initiative will involve community engagement, media outreach, and collaboration with local leaders to raise awareness about the provisions of the act. Some say this is a new chapter in Sierra Leone. And what the minister said is, we are determined to build a society where every child grows up free from abuse, fear, and harm, protected by the law and empowered by knowledge. That was their quote. The passing of the Child Rights Act of 2025 represents a pivotal moment in the country's efforts to align national legislation with international standards on child protection and human rights. Now, I know people personally who've gone through Bondo. You are not made aware before it happens. And when it happens, they hold you down and they use shears or knife and they cut the young ladies. It is very, very brutal, very painful. And it scars many people for life, actually. Now, you'll see people when you're in Sierra Leone sometimes with this white powder on them. And sometimes you see them walking or even dancing sometimes right after they've gone through the Bondo practice. And when I first saw this, I was unaware of what this was. I didn't even know. I was unclear, and I was told by someone on my paternal side of the family about what this was, and I was shocked. I had heard the term FGM. I had heard about female circumcision, but I didn't know what it meant and what it was. And I will tell you, I remember talking to a cousin of mine who grew up in Bo, and she lives there now. And she said to me, if you had a daughter, we would make her do Bondo. And I said, no, you wouldn't. It's not happening. It's not something that every tribe in Sierra Leone, not everybody of every tribe in Sierra Leone practices, but a lot of countries around the continent, not just in Sierra Leone, a lot of the outer tribes outside the capital cities or larger cities do practice this. So banning FGM is good. The issue is enforcing the ban. Will it happen? And if so, how? Child marriage was banned, but reports indicate it's still happening in Sierra Leone. That's what I hear. So Salon Today Gist says, where did you get this information from? This came from a couple of different websites and pages. And then I did a search on my favorite news site, where I looked into this, and they did confirm it, right? FGM banned in Sierra Leone. I'll share articles. It's not nationally banned as of July. There's no national law complicit. It's just this law was passed. So, but like if you want, let me give you guys a link. And I don't know if you can copy and paste it, but I'll put it in the comments here. Or I'll put it up. You know what I'll do is I'll put a link in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, just go back to this YouTube and you'll watch it. But that link there is the link that you can check out for the details on this. So they didn't explicitly call out FGM. They called out other things. However, as I mentioned, the ministry said that they're going to do something about it. Farquan Ali says FGM needs to be banned all over Africa and child marriages. 100%. 100%. It needs to be outlawed for sure. Tijan Sar says, and I'll copy your comment, Tijan. Tijan says, what does Tijan say? Let's see. FGM is abhorrent. Girls' and women's rights are human rights. Absolutely. That is a very true statement. And it should be banned all over. All right. So we will see if this is banned. We will see how it will be enforced. But knowing at least 4 people well, more than 4 people personally, but people that I consider friends or even people that I have been in a relationship with have gone through this before. And that's a conversation for another time. I don't feel equipped to discuss this. I do want to make sure someone who's been through it and an expert be on and to talk about what their experience was like so you guys can hear about it. It is important to talk about this more. And it's something that really doesn't get talked about enough. Farquan Ali says it should and must be be a severe punishment for disrespecting and abusing our sisters in Africa. There should be, absolutely should be severe punishment. All right, so that's FGM. And then the last story of the day before we bring this thing to a close is, for those of you who are in the US of A and you are willing and able to come down to the DMV in Maryland in particular, I will be at the Sierra Leone Diaspora Investment Conference on Friday, the 8th of August in Silver Spring, Maryland, as a moderator. Let's talk about it. So I'll be moderating. Well, first of all, I'm excited to announce that I'll be speaking and working on the 3rd annual Sierra Leone Diaspora Investment Conference on August 8th, 2025 in Silver Spring, Maryland at the Silver Spring Civic Center. I'll be joining a fantastic lineup of policymakers, entrepreneurs, and leaders passionate about Sierra Leone's economic growth. So I look forward to sharing insights, doing business and investments in Sierra Leone. So I will be on the COBLO panel. And it's basically, the panel is described as how African diaspora entrepreneurs can secure funding in a changing policy landscape. So this panel discussion will delve into the critical strategies that entrepreneurs and business leaders can employ to secure funding, foster meaningful connections, and stabilize their operations in the face of shifting policies in Sierra Leone. As regulations and economic landscapes evolve, understanding how to navigate these challenges is essential for business success. Panelists will share insights on identifying diverse funding resources, from traditional investors to innovative financing options, while emphasizing the importance of building a robust network that can provide support and collaboration opportunities. Additionally, the conversation will focus on practical approaches to adapting business models, enhancing operational resilience, and ensuring financial security and stability during uncertain times. Attendees will leave equipped with actionable strategies and a deeper understanding of how to thrive amidst change in Sierra Leone. The panelists are going to be Marie Harvey. She's a business liaison officer for the Montgomery County Business Center. Then there's also going to be Gerald Barudi, He's the vice president of the Business Finance Group. And then lastly, Mariama Jallo Hayward, the founder of FinTech with MJ. So those are the people that are going to be on the panel. I'm excited to be hosting the panel. Shout out to Vicky Rameau for putting this together, the 3rd annual conference. The Real Source says, I'm excited about the conference. VRC is doing good work with these conferences. I think this is really important to have these conferences. Without them, I think that, you know, these conversations don't really happen as often as they should. And so I'm looking forward to seeing some actionable insights come out of these in the next couple of conferences. But it's always great for networking. I've run in and met some really interesting people in the previous years. So I want to go back to some earlier comments about FGM that came up. So Neffy's Living Out Loud and Home Decor and More says, this boils down to education. The more educated we have, the populace banning these acts becomes easier. The second thing is ending poverty, also will assist with stopping child marriage. That is very true. Neffy's saying it's a great idea. Nafi says it's a great idea for the conference. So back to the conference discussion again. It is a great idea to have a conference. The Sierra Leone Diaspora Investment Conference, it's on August 8th. If you guys are interested, you can get your tickets on makesierraleonefamous.com. That's where I got my tickets last year. You guys might remember I was in the States for just over 3 months. And as soon as I heard about the conference, I went myself because I think it's important, for one, for the Sierra Leoneans in the diaspora, people who are focused on Sierra Leone, to come to conferences like this, to meet other people who are looking at investing. Those of you who already have ideas and things that you want to do and don't think that the speeches are going to be useful, it's always a great place to network. At the very least, to network with other people. Because think about it. If you're coming to a conference like this, you have the mindset of looking for investment or investing. And so these are the people you want to be around, for sure. So guys, any other questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? Okay, Farquan Ali says, and this is probably going back to FGM, men know and psychologists know that the brain doesn't fully develop until the age of 21, male or female. They also know usually the female matures faster than men in general. Okay, yes. Actually, it doesn't fully develop, from what I understand, until 25, actually. So technically, if we really are going to be honest about whether adulthood should start, it should probably start at 25. I don't know where 18 came from. I guess they just determined that should be when you're done school. But if your brain doesn't fully develop till you're 25, it's weird that the drinking age is 21. The legal your adulthood starts at 18. I think that's just unrealistic, considering brains aren't fully developed by that point in time. And so, you know, that's just what I understand to be the case. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand it to be 25, not 21. All right. All right. So it looks like we got most of the comments out the way. If you guys want to continue the discussion, go in the comments of the replay of this video. I will be responding to all comments in the replay of this video. I have to go now, unfortunately, so I will not be able to continue this discussion, but I will be able to continue it in the comments in the replay. So I hope you found this useful. As always, we'll keep you posted on all the updates with the stories. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys all on the next live stream. Bye, guys.